with you, specifically in the platform of good clinical practice, because we all know that you are one of the renowned figure in this particular field of clinical research, specifically ethics. So a good Sunday morning. So we'll discuss in good Sunday morning about good clinical practice. So actually, we are going to discuss about these broad headings to understand the definition of GCP, to know the evolution of GCP, little bit of history, to explain the purpose of good clinical practice, and to elucidate the principles of GCP. So actually, good clinical practice is nothing but good clinical research practice. And the definition is very clear cut, and the definition of GCP gives us the idea what we are going to talk about. So it is nothing but a standard, and a standard for the design, conduct, performance, monitoring, auditing, recording, analysis, and reporting of the clinical trials, that provides assurance that the data and the reported results are credible and accurate, and the rights, integrity, confidentiality of trial subjects are protected. So these are the two important points that assurance are coming from the good clinical practice. Number one, the reported results are credible and accurate, and number two, the subjects' rights, integrity, and confidentiality are protected. And same thing, the WHO definition, they are also writing like that. This is a standard for clinical studies which encompasses the design, conduct, monitoring, termination, audit, analysis, reporting, and documentation of the studies, and which ensures that studies are scientifically and ethically sound, and the clinical properties of that particular pharmaceutical product under investigation are properly documented. So we all know that with all atrocities, we get something good. As there is some, now we all know that unfortunate oxygen crisis happening in our country now. Now we are more promoting to build up oxygen plants. So in 1947, when that Nazi war crimes happened, there was Nuremberg Code was created, and that was created as a result of unethical and horrific experiments carried out during the World War II at different Nazi war camps by German physicians, who were subsequently tried and charged at that Nuremberg military tribunal. And this code states that for a scientific basis in research on human subjects, and voluntary consents and protection of the participants is required. And you can see this picture particularly when Nazi men was immersed in a very cold water, and it was the observed from the outside that when that particular patient will die, and before dying, what are the physiological changes happening. So these are the things which triggers our insights to develop ethical guidelines. Tuskegee syphilis trial, again a very sad history. That is in 1932, the Public Health Service working with Tuskegee Institute began a study to record the natural history of syphilis. So this person who were included in this particular study was not offered any particular treatment. The natural history of syphilis was seen. So this is again an unfortunate thing. And we all know that between 1950s or we can say the at around 1960s rather, 1962 was the particular year when the world was once again shocked by the severe fetal limb deformities that is linked with the use of maternal thalidomide, and this was known as thalidomide disaster, and that triggers something which is known as Kefauver-Harris amendments, which were passed in in the USA to evaluate all new drugs for safety and efficacy. Next is the Jewish chronic disease trial, when their elderly populations were subjected to some cancerous cells, and around more than 20 elderly patients were included in that particular study. They were injected with live cancer cells, and that was totally unethical, and they just want to see how human body fights off malignant cells. So this is the Jewish chronic disease trial. Next is that Willowbrook study. Again, it was done between 1950s to 1972 with children with mental disability at a state school in Willowbrook. They were intentionally infected with viral hepatitis in an unethical experiment. So this is to see to see the how much that what is the natural history of viral hepatitis, and whether there is a possibility to develop some vaccine. It is just like that. Now we can take some people, a group of people who are vulnerable, and make them susceptible to COVID-19, and see how we can develop vaccine against COVID-19. So these are different unethical studies, and Milgram study is one of the very unfamous psychological study, where the research participants were told some untruth, some falsehood, and then they did the research. So this type of things generally helped us to have some ethical principle development. So Nuremberg Code came on 1949, then 1964, the Declaration of the Helsinki, that was developed by World Medical Association, and they generally form the basis for the ethical principles that underlie the ICH GCP guidelines that we have today. So the focus of this declaration was the protection of the rights of human subjects, and this is very clear in their amendments. So next is the Belmont Report, and Belmont Report, which was issued in April 1979. The principles of this particular report was number one, the respect for persons. That means it acknowledged the dignity and freedom of every person, and it requires obtaining informed consent from research subjects. So that was emphasized in there. Next, number two is beneficence. This principle requires that researchers maximize benefits and minimize harms that is associated with research, and research related risk must be reasonable in light of the expected benefits. And number three is the justice. That means this particular principles requires equitable selection and recruitment and fair treatment of the research subjects. So these are the cardinal principles. Autonomy. Each person should be given the respect, time, and opportunity necessary to make his or her own decisions. Beneficence obligates the researcher to secure the well-being of all study participants. And justice, it is a difficult and complex ethical issue, but attempts should be made to distribute the risk and benefits fairly without bias. So who should bear the risk of study and who should receive its benefit? Participants should not be selected due to class, socioeconomic status, or race unless justified by the study objectives. So these are the cardinal features, and we all know that in 1990s, that is all known as the decade of harmonization, and the place where Tintin came, the first meeting of International Conference on harmonization of technical requirements for registration of pharmaceuticals for human use occurred. The primary participants were USA, European Union, and Japan. There are some regulatory and industry representatives. Observers like from Canada, Australia, and Nordic countries were there, and WHO acts as a facilitator. So what is the purpose of GCP? The two things is important. Number one, the data quality, and number two is ethics. These two equal to GCP, we can say. So data and reported results are credible and accurate. That is the quality data. And rights, integrity, and confidentiality of the trial subjects are protected. That is equal to ethics. But in ethics, broadly, we can say it is an M factor. There is two M is important for ethics. I am not talking about M for money. I am talking about two M means materialism and morality. So these two M, materialism and morality, is important for ethics. So materialism is also required to have a good ethics, because bad science means a bad ethics. So these are the 13 principles, and these 13 principles we are going to discuss one by one. So number one, the ethical conduct. So clinical trials to be conducted in accordance with the ethical principles that have their origin in the Declaration of Helsinki and are consistent with GCP and the applicable regulatory requirements. So these are the things that already we discussed. That is number one, respect for persons, beneficence, justice. Number two is the risk benefit assessment. So before initiating a trial, we have to weigh the foreseeable risk and inconveniences against the anticipated benefit for the individual trial subject and society. Initiate and continue only if the anticipated benefits justify the risk. So this risk benefit assessment is very important. And next is subject over science and society. For the sake of our society, who is now exposed to this COVID-19 pandemic, we cannot take away the right, safety, and well-being of one trial subjects and just expose them in COVID-19. So the rights, safety, and well-being of the trial subjects are the most important considerations and should prevail over the interest of science and society. Adequacy of the pre-existing information. So if we want to start one phase 3 clinical trial, we need to check what are the non-clinical and other phase 1, phase 2 clinical trial data that is available before starting the phase 3 clinical trial. So the available non-clinical and clinical information on an investigational product should be adequate to support the proposed clinical trial. And that is also important, the scientific validity. The clinical trial should be scientifically sound and described in a clear, detailed protocol. So bad science means bad ethics. There should be one independent review. A trial should be conducted in compliance with the protocol that has received prior institutional review board or independent ethics committee. So this approval is important, IEC approval for favorable to conduct any study. So that is the role of ethics committee. Medically qualified care. So the medical care given to and medical decisions made on behalf of subjects should always be the responsibility of the qualified physicians. And if we are going to conduct one dental trial, so there should be a qualified dentist. Trained and experienced personnel. So each individual involved in the conduct of a trial that should be qualified by education, training, and experience to perform his or her respective task. Informed consent, and for that particular principles, we always have a exposure to this type of GCP course. So informed consent, freely given informed consent should be obtained from every subject prior to clinical trial participation. Efficiency of information handling. All clinical trial information should be recorded, handled, and stored in a way that allows its accurate reporting, interpretation, and verification. This generally helps us to have a credible data. So this principles applies to all records referenced in this guideline, irrespective of the type of the media used. Confidentiality of records that could intensify subjects, or we can say it will help subjects protection respecting their privacy and confidentiality rules in accordance with the applicable regulatory requirements. Drug accountability. So there is another thing, just like GCP, we have GMP, good manufacturing practice. So now the principles of good manufacturing practice is also intermingled with GCP. So investigational products that should be manufactured, handled, and stored in accordance with the applicable good manufacturing practice, and they should be used in accordance with approved protocol. And lastly, the GCP principle 13, that is the quality through systems and procedures. So systems with procedures that assure the quality of every aspect of the trial should be implemented. And aspects of the trial that are essential to ensure human subject protection and reliability of the trial results should be the focus of such systems. So in basics, what is important for all ethics committee members or researchers to ensure ethics? I think this is the important line. Do unto others what you would like others to do unto you. So in Sanskrit, there is one slok that Atmanah Pratikulani Pareshuna Samacharit. So if I, as a researcher, I am seeing my research participants in the opposite chair, just take yourself in that opposite chair and see whether you can act like same. Then if you are acting like same, then I think you are ethical. And for that, we should not, for any research, we should not be bothered about the result when we are conducting research. And that is why this sloka we always follow, that karmanne vadikaraste ma phalesu kadachana ma karma phal heturhu mate sangasta karmani. So thank you all. Thank you for having this good clinical practice session in this good Sunday morning. Thank you.